Well, I didn't expect to see these guys so soon again, but it so happened that randomly Riot released a new story about Kha'Zix and Rengar. It's not a long story, so don't expect any changes to the already existing lore. However, as you can tell from the title of this video, it still gave us an interesting new detail. So let's quickly summarize the story of both Rengar and Kha'Zix, just in case you don't remember. Starting with Rengar. Rengar is a Vastayan trophy hunter. If you don't know what the Vastaya are, the Vastaya is a race that came to be after the two primary mortal races started cross-reproducing. These two races were the Vastaya Shirei, which are ancient magical animals, and humans. Rengar specifically is a Shuriman Vastaya of the Kailash tribe, which is located in the jungles east of the Shuriman deserts. The Kailash were known hunters, and so ever since Rengar was born as the son of their chieftain, Ponjaf, he was also expected to grow into a mighty hunter. However, Rengar was born small compared to the other Kailash, and Ponjaf, his own father, thought his size would make him a worthless hunter, and so he ignored him, assuming that he would starve to death. Given no other option, Rengar fled their camp, ashamed that he disappointed his father. He survived for weeks by eating grubs and plants, until one day he was nearly killed by a legendary human hunter called Markon. Markon pitied Rengar's state, and so he decided to let him live. After all, Rengar wasn't really the deadliest foe he faced. But instead of running away, Rengar carefully followed the hunter. He fed off the corpses Markon left behind, and he studied his every move. Rengar still wanted to rejoin his tribe, and this was a good way to learn. But eventually Markon grew sick of the weak Kailash that kept following him, and so he pulled his knife to Rengar's throat and told him that the only way to become a hunter was to hunt. After that, Markon threw Rengar the knife and kicked him down a ravine, where Rengar was forced to make his first kill. From that day onward, Rengar started looking for more and more dangerous prey. And though he would never be as big as the other Kailash, he was determined to be twice as ferocious. Over time, instead of coming back to his camp each time with a new scar, he began coming back with new trophies. He polished a sandhawk skull to a sheen, he braided the teeth of a shrieker into his hair. Then, when he decided the time had come, Rengar returned to his tribe, ready to be accepted as a true hunter. But when he arrived there, Ponjaf laughed at Rengar's trophies, and he told him that only when he brings back the head of the legendary void abomination Kha'Zix would he be welcomed back into the tribe. Blinded by his eagerness, Rengar accepted this challenge, but he underestimated his foe. Kha'Zix managed to surprise Rengar, which led into Rengar's immediate defeat. But Rengar managed to survive the fight, and he returned back to the tribe. There he admitted his failure to Ponjaf, who, as expected, shamed Rengar even more. But as his father kept talking, Rengar noticed that his hut was old and dusty. The chieftain had not hunted anything in a long time. He probably sent Rengar after Kha'Zix because he was too afraid to do it himself. So Rengar interrupted his father, calling him a coward. Many Kailash were born with strong bodies or comfortable homes. Rengar didn't have any of it, and he had to earn it by facing death in the jungles. After that, he leapt onto his father and he gutted him from neck to belly. The tribe crowned Rengar with flame roses, making him their new chieftain. But Rengar didn't need the village's acceptance. All he needed was adrenaline pumping through his veins. And so he left the village, without taking a trophy from what was left of his father. It wasn't a kill worth remembering. Instead, he set out into the jungle, seeking the legendary void creature. Not to satisfy the Kailash, but to satisfy himself. Although this was the entire Rengar's bio, I quickly skipped over the part where he tried to hunt Kha'Zix, because that's what the new story is about. Rengar also has a short story called Prey, where he hunts a Razorhide, a beast from the jungles. But that story is more of a flavor story, because it just shows us how Rengar hunts. So we can safely skip it without missing out on anything important. So instead, let's quickly cover what Kha'Zix even is, before we jump into the new story. Kha'Zix is a Voidborn predator. He was probably let loose into Runeterra through one of the many Void Rifts around Valoran. Although, it is possible that he came into the jungles from the Great Rift in Icathia. Either way, his goal is to consume the most promising creatures, because with every kill, Kha'Zix absorbs the prey's strength, evolving and growing more powerful. He started as a small fragile creature, but when he faced other small creatures, he realized they wouldn't really boost his need to evolve. And so, tiny Kha'Zix repeatedly risked his own life to consume creatures much greater than him. And with each kill, he evolved and adapted to his surroundings. Soon, he didn't need to carefully pick his targets, and instead, Kha'Zix aggressively jumped from kill to kill, thinking he was unstoppable. Until one day he faced Rengar, and for the first time Kha'Zix felt his own blood spill before the two hunters parted ways again. Kha'Zix now sees Rengar as a great prey, and just as Rengar is trying to hunt down Kha'Zix, Kha'Zix wants to absorb Rengar's strength. This was Kha'Zix's bio. At this point you might be thinking, what exactly happened between Kha'Zix and Rengar during their fight? And that's what we will answer right now, as we jump into the story called Adaptation. The story begins with Rengar's thoughts. He explains what it means to be exiled from his tribe. The exiles are never forgotten. They never existed at all. Each heartbeat unworthy of counting. Even slaves wear chains, proving their value. Even the dead are mourned. But Rengar was nothing to the Kailash that birthed him. But there was still a chance. As we learned from the bio, Rengar's father gave him a chance. He was to track down a shadow, bladed shard of moonless night, an abomination. Was he to return with its head? He shall be exiled no more. Rengar blended with the trees. He took in his surroundings. His instincts made him feel 1,000 creatures, big and small. But he searched for that one thing that didn't belong here. He didn't bring any decorative trophies with him, because the rattling might have given him away. The only things he had was his blade, a layer of grease to slicken his fur, and the slow measured beat of a hunter's heart. For a while, it seemed like there was nothing among all the life in the rainforest. Until there was something. Something faint was slithering over Rengar's senses. Rengar felt its unfamiliarity. It was wrong in every way. Repulsive. An enemy to life in ways he couldn't describe. It defied everything around it. And so the hunt began as Rengar followed its trail. He snaked around, never touching anything. Soon enough, Rengar was rewarded with the sound of bloodletting. Something was dying nearby, and it wasn't dying well. It was a pack of jungle raptors, who normally are capable predators, and rarely ever prey. Their attacker was either desperate with hunger, or unconcerned by their lethality. Rengar grinned. Maybe he found a challenge after all. At this point, the smell of something wrong in the air was overpowering. Rengar silently climbed a nearby tree, crouching in the leafy shadows. His opponent had speed. That was its real weapon. He could only see glimpses as it darted back and forth, finishing its kills and preparing to feast. Rengar noticed it didn't care about trophies. There was a greater hunger in its movements. Something beyond the primal urge to survive. When the last raptor died, the creature slowed down, but it never stopped. It slid across the ground like smoke. And finally, Rengar could see it more clearly. It made his brain itch. It was an insect, but not completely. Its parts didn't make sense. Limbs and flesh and shell and claws. But all of it belonged to one creature. All inside a blackish-purple outer skeleton. The air and light warped around it. They didn't want to touch it either. That observation made Rengar realize that the creature faced exile too. But he was ready to send it back to whatever foulness spawned it. With Markon's knife in his grip, Rengar leapt down. He landed behind the creature, but it didn't turn around even as Rengar slowly approached it. Rengar knew how to move unseen, unheard. He had become an apex predator by adaptation and instinct, but the instinct was telling him that something was wrong. Rengar hesitated for a moment. And that was the moment that saved his life. He barely saw the claw as it sliced the air. The creature knew he was coming. And had he not stopped, it would have ended him. Everything until now was so clean. He regretted not recognizing this sooner. Rengar was blinded by the promise of his father, and he was left vulnerable. The creature hissed, and Rengar couldn't tell if it was the sound of pain or pleasure. But a moment later, a pair of new limbs erupted and unfurled into hideous dripping wings. The creature saw Rengar as a threat, and so it changed. Rengar lunged forward, but he was too slow. The creature sent Markon's knife spinning from his grip. Foolishly, sentimentally, Rengar's eyes followed it for an instant, and that was all the creature needed for a true strike. Another bladed claw flashed out. Then there was hot stinging pain, and roaring between his ears. Rengar fell back, blood slicking his face. He scrambled to gain distance, trying to blink the red from his vision. The right eye was a blur, the left remained dark. The roaring didn't fade. Rengar reached for his cheek, and he realized what the beast had taken. The creature beat the last vile slime from its wings, and then it rose to hover above Rengar. It held out his bloodied eye, as if it was mocking him. Then it slowly lowered it over its fangs, and the eye dropped down its gullet. Rengar felt rage consume him, as the enemy managed to snatch the role of the hunter away from him. Refusing to be defeated, he hurled himself at the enemy. He didn't need his knife, he was born with claws, and he knew how to use them. The two hunters collided, and there was an unending dance of red. They cut away at each other over and over, as to them, in that moment, the rest of the world no longer mattered. The story then cuts to the final moments of their battle. As night approached, Rengar's enemy fled. Or maybe that was just what he wanted to see. Maybe it learned all it could from him, and now it was on to greater things. Exhaustion overtook his body, and suddenly Rengar collapsed. With all the bloody wounds covering his body, Rengar felt a strange connection to that monster. The connection that bonded when it ate his flesh. The Keylash called the monster Kha'Zix, which in the old mortal tongue meant, you face yourself. It was true that as the creature always looked forward to new challenges ahead, Rengar looked back at his past to summon his exile's fury. But that was not enough. As the enemy adapted, he had to as well, for this skill belonged to him. And that was the new complete story of Rengar and Kha'Zix. There is also the small part where Rengar meets Gnar, but since Gnar is supposed to be in Freljord, and now it's not even confirmed if it is Rengar in that story, it's kind of just a pointless story that doesn't really make sense. Anyway, at this point, the story of Rengar and Kha'Zix was updated about 4 or 5 times. And every single time, these updates come out of nowhere. But I do think that this last story was meant to be released with the Aizaokan update, because the Keylash are located near the borders of Ixtal. Also, Rengar's region was updated to Ixtal. Previously, he was marked as Shuriman. Overall, this new update is fine. We already knew that Rengar lost his eye to Kha'Zix, but we didn't know how. Also, it was cool how the story mentioned that when Rengar saw Kha'Zix for the first time, his brain itched. Now obviously that was because he didn't know what Rengar even is. But I think it might have been a reference to the fact that the void can literally drive you mad. Lastly, when you realize that Kha'Zix did eat Rengar's flesh together with his eye, I hope that in the far future, when Kha'Zix gets his visual update, he will have some of Rengar's features. Maybe he'll grow some fur, or maybe he'll grow a third eye. The Eye of Rengar. It sounds super improbable and quite creepy, but how cool would that be? The first Illuminati champion. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have neat mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.